Hello and welcome to the newest installment of the Lansdowne Library's very own podcast, where we bring on people every episode to talk about things they are excited about and knowledgeable of.
This week, we are joined by Maria and Alex, two of our co-workers here at the library. I'm, of course, one of your hosts, Jeff.
And I'm David.
And this month, we're going to be talking about board games, as it is International Games Month here at the library.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're doing a lot. There's like a lot of stuff going on, and I'm super excited. I think it's really cool. Gaming has gotten a resurgence, I feel like, in popularity.
Yeah. It is nice there's a lot of new games being made, a lot of new board games being made, especially if you look on Kickstarter. There's a lot of really cool things. So it is nice that it is in the forefront.
There's a wealth to choose from.
Yeah.
There's many things to spend your money on.
Yeah.
Or get for free at the library.
Or get for free at the library, yeah.
We have 82 titles currently available for rent, including probably my favorite, Dixit.
Oh, is Dixie your favorite game?
It's definitely in the top 5. It was just a fantastic game.
Well, I do have a question just before we proceed. I know board games is kind of what comes to mind, but when we think of board games, does that necessarily mean there needs to be a board, or does this also encompass games that are like, cards and dice or whatever, but no board?
I feel like a board game is like any game you can play at a table that has a physical stuff. So like dice game, I don't know, I got them all in my head. They're all the same to me.
Yeah. I don't know if this is an arbitrary distinguishing thing, but I would say tabletop game and board game. The only thing that I distinguish is when there is a physical board, then I call it a board game. But then you get things like Dungeons and Dragons, which can have a board and sometimes doesn't have a board. So I'm fine with using them interchangeably, but to make this a little bit more tangible, Dominion, which is one of my favorite games, I would not call that a board game because there isn't a board.
It's just cards.
However, the way you play it and the dynamics of it, the game rules are pretty much exactly like a board game. It has the same type of feel. It is the same type of thing where it's something that you can get a bunch of friends or family members to just sit around a table and play.
It is kind of a complicated terminology, more so than you would think. Because, is D&D a board game? I would definitely keep that as a separate thing. Are card games board games? Some, I feel, are, but, I wouldn't call poker a board game, certainly.
No. Although some versions of poker have a board. So.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the really complicated card games like, Magic the Gathering, which, again, I wouldn't put as a board game. It's its own third thing.
Although technically, especially if you have a play mat, it's more obvious. The way you set the cards, it is a board. Which could probably be the argument
for Dominion. And Dominion, too, because you have to set it out in a particular way, and you have so many of...
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is kind of a board.
It is a very arbitrary distinction, especially... So, perhaps a better distinction is, I think what, Jeff, you were getting at, is there's a different play style. There are a bunch of different games, but, if you get a game like Monopoly versus a game like HeroScape, they play very, very different, even though you could argue both have a board. HeroScape is a little debatable about that. But there's a different play style. So if you get games like Dominion, I would say Dominion is much more like Monopoly in terms of play style, and there's a very simple, straightforward set of rules than other games like Magic or something like that. I don't know if that's a good distinction, but that's kind of how I do it in my mind.
I think the laziest and therefore best distinction I can come up with is if everything you need is in one box, that's probably going to be a board game to me. If you have to bring your own cards for playing, if you have to buy something separate, although some games do now have expansions, that's become very common. But as long as basically everything everyone needs fits in that one box, that's probably going to be more or less what we're discussing today.
Well, and as we are discussing board games, Jeff, you mentioned Dixit's your favorite. But
yes.
What is everybody else's favorite board games or tabletop or whatever fits the category?
Again, there is a little bit of a crossover in terms of where do you want to go in terms of complexity. So one of my favorite games is actually a game that's found its start on Kickstarter called Rising Sun. Has anybody played that?
Can't say I'm familiar.
I highly recommend it. It does have a bunch of expansions, but they all have really cool minis, so they're very worth it. It is set in feudal Japan, and it is a resource management game mixed with kind of like a Risk element, the board game Risk. So you have one of the feudal factions of Japan, and you're trying to conquer the entirety of the island. And to do that, you have to manage your soldiers, your finances, your cities, and appease whatever gods you decide to worship. And so all of this allows you to then, when at the end of each season, they mark the game by seasons. At the end of each season, you then go to battle with each other, and based on how you manage things, you have a better army or a worse army. And even though this sounds like there's a lot of pieces involved, there are a lot of physical pieces involved, it's a very straightforward game. It's not complicated to learn. There's a lot of strategy in it, but what I really like about games, I do like the complicated games, but there's something very nice about games that are just simple, straightforward. Mm-hmm. You can pick up how to play it in like 10, 15 minutes, and then just enjoy and explore. It also has a lot of really nice miniatures, which I really like, to represent the gods, to represent your soldiers, your priests, your cities, everything.
That sounds really, I've never played that game. It sounds really cool. I feel like I'm not good at having favorites because I just get the shine. I see the shiny thing. I get very excited by it. I played a couple times until like a new shiny thing. So my current shiny things are, Letter Jam, which is like a cooperative word puzzle game. And I played Dragoon recently, which was really cool. That's kind of like, I don't know. I don't really know how to even explain that. There's like some action economy in there, and there's some like kind of like defend your territory, steal territory. There's a lot of randomness in it, but it's cool. It's got very good. I always appreciate some good components. I like a good game component.
It's within our collection. I still haven't played this game, but Camel Up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, when we got that board game in, I was so impressed with not just the parts, but how well it all fit together. Like, I was obsessed with just how well made that game was and its box and components. Like, that's worth so much to me.
And that is also something that has really taken off in recent years, of the focus towards that, of how they fit in the box and the quality of the pieces. So if you look at the classic board games, obviously they do have things. You think of Life, it has a little car with the tokens in it, and or whatever you would call the people.
I've always just called those ones pegs.
Makes sense.
That's really all they are.
And you have Monopoly with its classic pieces, but you do see a lot of games coming out now that have these very elaborate things. So like the game you were referencing, Jeff, the dice tower for rolling is a pyramid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there's very strong themes with it. There, again, with Rising Sun, there's a whole bunch of very, very artistically made pieces. And a lot of the games I'm sure we're going to be talking about are going to have a lot of just impressive artwork for the boards, for the cards, for the pieces, and everything involved. It's very nice.
What about you, Dave?
Well, I've got the two that stick in my mind, because like I feel like I don't play super bunch of card, or rather tabletop. Started playing more card games recently, but probably my favorite board game is probably King of Tokyo, because I'm a big monster movie fan. Mm-hmm. So that one was a lot of fun, and it's pretty straightforward. I think I taught it to like my brother-in-law's mom at one point, and that was fun. Only other one that I played, I think, a lot of recently was another Kickstarter game. It's Binding of Isaac 4 Souls, which...
Sorry, I made a face because I love the Binding of Isaac game.
Have you played 4 Souls?
I have not. I've not played the board game. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Maybe we should bring that to the Christmas party.
I would love to. I know we'd get weird looks. Like, there's a reason
definitely,
we kind of can't have it here at the library because of certain things. But I would love to play that with you guys at some point.
The art is a bit not particularly.
Some of the art and themes.
It's a little gruesome. Let's put it that way. And there's fun in that, but yeah, I don't want to be responsible for giving children nightmares too often. That one might do just that.
I don't think the children have nightmares, but I think their parents would complain.
Parents would definitely complain.
But it's a fun, like, sort of a 4v, like a 4-player, one free-for-all, where you try to collect, you have to beat boss monsters and collect, essentially, their souls. And I think the first person to get to 4 wins, but you can die and you'll lose items, you have to buy new items. It's crazy. I played with friends, it works, and I'm super stoked because I backed it the first time, and then they were like, oh, we're going to release like a super edition with all more stuff in it. And I was like, I gotta have it. And this one's cool because a bunch of the cards that, like, with backer goals and stuff, they're cameo cards. So Binding of Isaac is a video game, like an indie one. So there's a bunch of new indie stuff, including, probably my favorite card is one of the new bosses is from Darkest Dungeon. And it's like this head collector man who is like infamous for every time he shows up, it's like your run is immediately in jeopardy because he's just a pain. So I love just the idea that somewhere in a deck of cards, there's that one card that's like, the second you show up, I'm going to really start hating this game. I like surprise mechanics. But anyway. But I guess we should talk about sort of the game in the room.
The game in the room. The game in the room.
Someone work that out with elephants.
Yeah.
Anyway, Catan.
Such a learned stuff.
Formerly settlers of Catan now. They just want you to call it Catan. And unclear as to
is that true?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
This is new.
Yeah. All of their marketing in recent years has just been Catan. And I guess it's because they have all of those like side games and side expansions. Because there's like
pirates and explorers,
but not just that, but
whatever.
like a lot of board games have done recently. They've done like themed ones because I'm pretty sure there was either, I can't remember if it was Star Trek or Star Wars, but it was one of the two.
There was I've seen a Star Trek Catan.
I want that.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. You can get, like, the civilization cards are instead, like, the characters from the original series come and help you. Yeah. So...
Although I feel like that would have been more interesting to have, like, the civilization cards literally be, like, Ferengi.
Oh, yeah.
Klingon.
Yeah.
Have them have specific effects.
But I kind of like if it's just like a flavored, like a textured version of the game. Because
that's ultimately what a lot of games have done in recent years.
Yeah.
They also have the basic version of the game in different formats. So there is a travel-sized version where it uses dice and like resource dice. And so you roll your resources, like you will roll and it will come up brick on the dice. So it'll be a little bit different.
Instead of setting up numbers.
Right. Instead of setting the whole board up,
Right.
Yeah.
So
there's also the very elaborate 3D board that you can
I've seen
get.
those, which I've been very tempted.
Yeah.
Because I like 3D things.
It looks really nice. And again, like high quality components mean a lot to me.
It's just nice to be able to see things. But one of the reasons why I really like Catan and why I wanted to talk about it so much is I think it's a gateway board game to the casual gamer who's only played the classic games.
Mm-hmm. Your Monopolies. Yeah.
The Life, Risk, Clue. It's often hard and even intimidating or even disinteresting to see all these crazy games. And a lot of them, like I was saying before, even though they're really cool and really fun, have a lot of very complicated rules. Mm-hmm. So I know we were disqualifying Magic as a board game, but even to use that just as a handy example, learning to play Magic is difficult.
30 years of rules now.
Oh, gosh.
It is the 30th anniversary this year for that game.
So there are definitely people here who can help you learn that, although it might be a little bit too late.
Just don't ask about banding.
Yeah.
Just don't. I will refuse to help you if you ask a question about banding.
Okay. Good to know. So... But a lot of people can see that, and that will be an obstacle that they just can't overcome, going straight from Candyland to Magic the Gathering. They can't do it.
It's a heck of a jump.
It is.
Complexity.
But Settlers of Catan, or just Catan, is kind of a way to get through that. In fact, one of my brothers has said that he'll never play a board game that he doesn't recognize the name of, because he knows his games and he doesn't want to worry about learning anything new. But Catan is one of those games where you're starting to see it more frequently. People are playing it more. They're realizing it's not this complicated, otherworldly game that you have to learn 30 years history to start playing it. You can pick it up very easily, and you can understand it very easily. Very straightforward, and so you can enjoy it quickly, and the games don't last a real long time. Rising Sun doesn't last too long either, but it does have a lot of setup time with it. And some of my other favorite games do take a really long time to play. Dungeons and Dragons takes forever to play, so...
I've literally been in one campaign that is running on 3 years now. You know, it's...
And so this is kind of a way to open people up, I think, to these new games, because there are a lot of really cool games out there. And then if you want to, there are so many expansions that you could get for Settlers of Catan. There are so many different versions you can get, and that can kind of get the ball rolling to see, you know, maybe get a little crazy with your board games.
And also it's like so popular because it's really good. Like I only played Settlers of Catan for the first time, like, I don't know, maybe like 3 years ago, but I've been playing board games for decades, and I've known and wanted to play Settlers of Catan for decades. And it really, I love it. Even though it is like the exception to my rule of like, I love design, I love good components, like Catan's not pretty to me. I don't enjoy the visual aspects of Catan.
It's a little bare bones.
But it is like endlessly reproducible, and like every game will be different, and you don't know what the outcome is until like the last several minutes, and someone can just sneak by and get the win. There's a lot of really good things about the experience of playing Catan that has made it so popular and such a classic. Like in the dictionary, the visual dictionary of board game, like Catan is if not the board game, like one of the board games it's pictured. Kind
of its own weird little juggernaut now, because it is a gateway game for so many people, because it's, you know, if you've got a friend that's into board games, they're going to probably show you Catan, because it's the least intimidating, like, fancy game of that style. Like, it's all you gotta do is roll dice, trade resources, and be the first person to this number of points.
And again, similarly to, I think I said something like this already, but simplicity in games is really, really nice, because that doesn't mean it's a simple game. It means that it's easy to learn, and then with that simplicity, you can get a wealth of strategy. Every game is different, which does require you to actively use strategy to find out what's the best option for the game that you are currently in.
What's going to be the rare resource here?
Right. There's not as much, not to put something like chess down, because chess is fun too, but the board is always the same in chess. The strategy, if you did one strategy in chess one time, you can use that same strategy again another time with similar success. Not so with Catan necessarily, because it's always changing, it's always adapting, depending on how the board is set up, depending on what your opponents do, depending on how many opponents you have.
Goodness, I guess it was last month during Family Game Day here. We had a group in who needed an extra player, so I sat down with them to play Catan, and it's so weird playing with people you haven't played with before, because I'm like, okay, what's everyone trying to do? You know, you've got the one player that's just like, I'm just going to keep buying, you know, cards. I personally tend to favor just trying to get a long road going regardless, just because getting the longest getting the longest road is worth points, but also it's just, I like having options for where I'm building territory, you know?
I have gotten longest road sometimes, but I tend to not to, because no matter when I'm playing or who I'm playing with, at least 2 other people want the longest road.
Yeah, it's an easy identifiable goal.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, okay, I want to do that because that's worth 2 whole points. And that's a lot in Catan.
Yeah.
What do you only need? 13?
I thought it was 11.
I think
11?
it's 11.
There we go.
Yeah.
2 points is a bunch at that point. And yeah, it's again, setting up Catan takes maybe 2-3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's about game runs 45 minutes to an hour. It's a great game. Like, if you're somebody like me who's going to have occasions where it's like, me and friends are just going to hang out and play games all day, Catan's a good one to just start off the day. It's quick. It's easy. One of my favorite games that we have in the collection is Root. It's a fantastic game. You know, the card art's beautiful. It has fun little meeples. It takes about 4 hours to play.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't get to play that one too often because it's a long game and it's fantastic. We also have the Dune board game, which I've never played, but I've heard the game runs about 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah.
You know, for some people, that's, if somebody, texted me tomorrow and be like, this is what we're doing this weekend. We're just spend a day playing Dune, I would be there in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. But it is also nice to have something simple and quick to get you some game time in.
I agree. I mean, the game that I probably play the most is Egyptian Rat Screw, which is just a simple card game. Mm-hmm. And like the video game that I play the most is probably Binding of Isaac. Because it's something that you can pick up for 5 minutes and then put down and you can complete a whole game in an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. Which, on that, I know this is a little bit of a tangent in terms of quick, easy to play games. One that really surprised me in how much I liked is not a board game, technically it's a card game, but is Exploding Kittens.
Oh, yeah.
Or Exploding Cats. Is it cats
it's
or
Exploding
Kittens?
Okay. Now you have me second guessing myself.
It is Exploding Kittens. Yeah.
We have 2 copies of it here.
Okay, yes,
the
we
original
do.
And the party pack.
This is actually where I found out about it, was at the library. And as we've been saying, the aesthetic, the appearance and artwork of the cards mean a lot to me. And so the artwork of this was extremely off-putting to me because it's very, very simplistic, very, very grotesque in a lot of ways. Very
cartoony.
Cartoony. It's like a lot of the troll man faces on the internet, kind of like that in cat form in some ways. And so I'm like, this is immature, this is, beneath me. And I was very, very wrong. The game, despite the art, I still don't like the art, but the game mechanics are beautifully simplistic in how they operate. You can really only do a couple things each turn. And yet with these limited options of turns, you can have enormous amounts of strategy. You're trying to not have your cat explode. That is the premise of the game. Everybody's cat is going to explode at some point, so you have to make sure everybody else explodes before you explode. And so you're just... it's similar to Uno in the sense that you change the direction of who's picking cards, you get people to pick up more cards, kind of like that. But similar, again, to Uno, there's more strategy involved. There's a lot to do. Yeah, I highly, highly recommend it. Maybe somebody can rework the art and do a new version of it, because that is a really big sticking point with me.
Have you seen Here to Slay? I think it's made by the Exploding Kittens people, and that's my partner's favorite board game. He wants to play every time we do a game. He wants to play that one, and it's kind of like D&D, sort of. Like you all have your different things, but the art is very cute.
Yeah, it's very
super cute.
My Little Pony-esque in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They have another game, The Wrong Party, that is a drafting game that is similar art.
Okay.
Like a deck building kind of game?
It's not quite a deck building game. So it's more like Sushi Go.
Okay, yeah.
So, you're trying to build the best party of the 4 categories. It's political, adventuring, costume. What's the 4th one? I can't remember the 4th one, but it's something the equivalent of family friendly. There's definitely a pun to it, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But essentially, it's these 4 colors, and at the start of the round, you'll flip over what kind of party this is, and sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2 colors, and that gives you bonus points if all of your cards match. And it's a very cute, simple game. Takes about 10 minutes to play. Again, it's fantastic for just sort of starting.
That's nice. Here to Slay takes forever.
Well, see,
sometimes.
That's why I brought up Exploding Kittens, because that's actually also a very quick game.
That's
too.
another 10-minute game.
Yeah, but they can get very intense.
Oh yeah.
Because it is very high stakes because cats are exploding. But the amount of thought that goes into each turn is really a lot. So it's a very good game.
I love those kinds of games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just quick paced, but so much is happening. And I remember, because one of the things with Exploding Kittens is if you draw the bomb, you can essentially, with certain cards, you can put it back in the deck a set number of cards down.
Oh, so you can
count. You're trying to intentionally.
Yeah.
I don't think you've got a way to save yourself.
Yeah.
Let me just make this your problem.
Yeah, and you can kind of slip it in, or you can put it in staring at the person that is going to pick it up. And so it's just great. It's a whole lot of fun just interacting with people as you're doing it.
I'm going to see if it's here. I might take it.
I recommend it. I recommend it very, very much. Just weird art.
Yeah.
I've seen the art. I really like the art.
You're allowed to like the art. I just don't like the art.
No, the art is beneath you.
It looks really immature.
It's, I believe the Oatmeal is the name of the artist.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff online.
Is it the same as the Here to Slay artist? Is it the same?
I don't think so. I think the same company produces both. Mm-hmm. Although I think he does have another weird game.
Great. Side tangent.
Yeah.
Oatmeal is not... That's one guy?
Yeah.
I thought that was
It's a website run by one guy, yeah.
Huh, okay.
Or at least the artist is referred to as the Oatmeal. He may have people beyond that working on the site, but that is how the artist is referred to.
The artist formerly known as the Oatmeal.
Possibly still. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been on that website.
And to be clear, people are allowed to like the art.
Yeah, I know.
But I mean, that's to be fair, that's a thing you're going to find a lot in, especially if you're trying to get groups together to play board games. My hatred for Monopoly is fairly well established, both on this podcast and just to people who know me.
Well, so does anybody like Monopoly?
I have heard.
You've heard?
I have heard and I've met. I don't know that they've played other games.
Okay.
I know people... Here's the thing about Monopoly. As a concept, I love Monopoly because the whole point is to teach you that capitalism is off if it is unfettered. And that's a great thing to be able to teach that simply, because every game of Monopoly essentially ends with one person with everything and all of the other players miserable.
So it does its job very well.
As an educational tool, Monopoly is fantastic.
It's just not fun, and it takes forever.
I don't think I've ever met anybody who genuinely liked it. I've met people who have said, let's play Monopoly, but half an hour to an hour in, they're trying to get out.
Yeah.
So,
the only people I know who I think enjoy Monopoly, legitimately enjoy, I'll say, I'll play Monopoly or whatever, and I'll usually be like, all right, can we play, the Pokemon Monopoly?
Exactly. I was going to say...
Because that's what's up. But I have met people, primarily back when I was in college, that they had, the speed rules to it, and they were the sweatiest players of Monopoly I've ever seen, and I'm like, you enjoy this? This looks even worse. Worse than long is they're throwing dice, they are, moving quickly, doing all this way too fast. I'm like, this sucks.
How is this worse than real Monopoly?
How are you playing Monopoly more competitively? It's already low-key competitive.
Yeah.
Doing it faster, speed chess is a thing. Speed Monopoly is an affront to board games.
I have a question. This is a poll. Hiding money under the board legal or illegal in Monopoly? Did you ever have anybody do that? My sister would hide $500 bills underneath the board so she didn't spend them, and so we didn't know that she had them.
That's interesting. I don't know that money is actually technically open information in Monopoly.
Yeah, if she's doing it to avoid paying things, then okay.
She pays her bills.
Okay.
Or at least she did when she was 12. Okay. She's an adult. She's got real bills now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about hiding. Like, if you don't show how many cards you have in your hand, it's like, what are you doing?
Well, see, that's why, there are certain players who play Monopoly who are like, I want to be nicer to this person because they don't have a lot of money. That's why you don't
do that.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
Because that's not how the game works. And so if you try to be nice to somebody, then you will lose.
Yeah.
So if somebody's hiding their money so that you'll be nice to them, then stop being nice to them. Then they'll stop hiding the money. It's like, you're broke? Well, give me $500 anyway.
Yeah, so I don't care. It is interesting, though, because as far as I know, at least, this is not against any rule of Monopoly. It does remind me of a game I hesitate to call one of my favorites. It is definitely the board game I have played the most, and that is Munchkin.
Oh, I hate Munchkin.
And one of the rules in Munchkin is literally, you can have up to 7 cards in hand, but the only thing that actually causes you to discard down to 7 is someone else calling you on it.
Oh.
Is you don't have to discard it at the end of your turn unless someone knows you have more than 7 cards. So my friends got very clever in ways to hide extra cards in their hand.
Yeah.
So no one would call them on it.
That I agree with. I haven't played Munchkin, but I have encountered other games where it's something about calling people on different things. And, despite what I've been saying about wanting to compete with people and being very intentional and like looking at people when I'm going to explode their kitten, I like the rules to be the rules and there not to be any funny business with that, just straightforward with that.
Yeah, you would almost certainly detest Munchkin because of the first line of text in the rules of Munchkin is to decide who goes first, everyone rolls a die and then argue about what this sentence means. Like, the rules are intentionally vague, and the reason for that is in the name of the game, for people who aren't aware. Munchkinning is a D&D terminology where you are perhaps not breaking, but certainly bending the rules to try and create an optimal character. And that is what the game is about. It includes cards such as one that is just called Cheat, to let you equip an item you should not be able to equip for whatever reason.
There's a lot about the flavor of Munchkin that I enjoy. I've just only played it twice, and every time it's been like 8 to 10 people, and the game's lasted forever. Mm-hmm. And I just can't do that
Munchkin,
anymore.
I find, is best with no more than 5 people. But the problem with Munchkin is almost every game is going to end the same way. You're going to have 3 players who are at level 9, all trying to win. You win the game by hitting level 10. They're all going to try and win at the same time. And the first guy is going to have his thing signed up. Everyone's going to spend a bunch of cards to stop them from winning. The second person's going to do the same thing. Everyone's going to spend their cards to stop them from winning. The third guy's going to do the thing, and everyone is out of cards to stop.
Yeah. So you have to be in third place.
Basically.
Yeah.
It is a game that encourages spiteful play, which, with the right play group, is a lot of fun, but it is not a game I would play with strangers. Dixit is like the perfect game for getting to know somebody. Munchkin, play with people who are aware that, no, you don't actually hate them, you're just playing the game.
It's like Monopoly.
Oh, no, because by the end of Monopoly, I do actively hate them. That's Monopoly's fault, not the players.
Yeah. So actually, I'll mention 2 games because they have one similarity in that they use tiles. But another, I think, gateway game is Tsuro. And I haven't actually played that version. I played the Tsuro of the Sea version. But as far as I understand, they're fairly similar in how you play them. But again, I think it's a very simple, straightforward game where, again, in the version I've played, you're sailing a ship. I understand the other one, you're a dragon flying above.
I think so, yeah.
Which we have this game at the library, too, if you're interested. you're just trying to sail your ship and not crash into anybody, which sounds easier than it is. But you push in tiles that have different currents, and the currents take you different ways. And so there's a lot of planning as to what you can do with the tiles that you're given. And you're watching the whole board and trying to see where everybody else is. And that is, again, one that you're just kind of pleasantly sailing for the first half of the game, and then the second half becomes chaos. But it is, again, another very simple game, doesn't take long to play, and isn't one of the classic games, although it's becoming classic, that is something that introduced you to new games. The other game, again, the common theme here is the tiles, is one of my favorite ones, is Carcassonne. I learned how to play that, Dominion, and Catan all at the same time, and so I kind of lumped those three together. They are kind of all building some sort of a civilization in them, so I guess there's that common theme. But they're not very similar in how they do that. So if you don't like one of them for whatever reason, I like all three of them. But if you don't like the mechanics of one, but you like the idea of resource management or what have you, you can try one of the other ones. So this one, you're building the board with tiles that you draw and you place them out. And then you have meeples that you put out to try to capitalize on certain resources. So you could have somebody on a road, then he's a thief and so he's robbing the road. You could have somebody in a field, he's a farmer. You could have somebody in a city, he's a knight, and so on and so forth, so that you can gain the different resources from these different areas and you have the biggest hold over the realm, I guess. And that's also one where it has a whole lot of really fun expansions where if you start playing it and you're like, yeah, this is fun, maybe you want to add a dragon into the mix where you start building your castle, but then a dragon burns it down. And so it starts off like the traditional games with just like, here's the core simple set of rules, just, build something. But then adds in some of the crazier elements of some of the more complicated games, such as the randomization of a dragon coming through or a volcano erupting or something. If you've played the computer game SimCity and you've turned the disaster thing all the way on to happen as frequently as possible, that's kind of the same thing as this. So, which is how I like to play. I would build up a big city and then turn disasters on. But I don't know if that was just me.
I feel like everyone has had that experience. And it is also worth noting, we've talked mostly about competitive games, but there's also a pretty solid cooperative market now for the games as well. Mm-hmm. The Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert are fantastic games. Pandemic, which I feel like now is a little bit more reasonable to discuss than in the past couple of years. A game that I felt really kind of, it's a fantastic game, but it was one that it's like, the past 2 years I've looked at and just been like, I can't right now.
Well, and you were telling me before about if you're not as comfortable with that, they came out with a Star Wars game that's very similar, or is it just a reskin of Pandemic?
I actually have purchased it. I haven't played it yet, but it uses some of the same systems. But in Pandemic, you're fighting outbreaks of various diseases, whereas it's just called Clone Wars. You're fighting breakouts of the Separatist army using the Jedi, and apparently things like General Grievous and the other Sith. Well, he's not a Sith, but you know what I mean.
It has Asajj Ventress and Dooku in it.
Yeah.
So that's another. I haven't gotten it yet, but I've been very, very tempted. I'm just not spending money right now, but I really want to. Because it's another one that has a really, really nice aesthetic. It has nice art. It has nice minis.
Yeah. Having the minis because it has your major Jedi, you have the big Sith Lords and Grievous. It's super neat. I don't think the game naturally comes with, but there was like a collector's version or a first printing that also had like a bunch of Droideka.
Oh, okay.
I was just about to ask, where are those Droideka?
And that's another thing, like maybe you don't think board games are for you, but you're a Star Wars fan or a Simpsons fan or, there are so many board games based around so many properties that even if you're like, I don't know if I want to try it, you might at least be interested because it already has that pre-built-in interest for you.
I played Horrified around Halloween, and if you like monster movies, that's a cooperative game. Did you play it? Did you?
I made sure the library had a copy.
I played it twice so far, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. There's actually also there's a separate game as well that is Horrified American Monsters. And instead of being the classic, Dracula and the
Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein,
it's just cryptids. So, there's a Jersey Devil encounter.
Oh, okay.
The Snallygaster. So, even if you're like me and you're into some very weird, specific niche nerddom, there's probably a game that's catering to you.
And that game has beautiful minis.
Yeah.
The minis in that game are so nice.
Okay, I have to look into that.
Again, we do have a copy here.
Yeah, that's how I played it.
We have a copy here last Halloween. Laura asked me, "Hey, do you have any game recommendations?" And that was the first one on the list.
Yeah, there's a couple of cooperative games that I wanted to mention. One, I haven't played it yet, but I've seen Will Wheaton's tabletop show where they played it, and I really like. Yeah, it's a shame.
Miss that show.
I really miss it.
It was a fantastic show.
But Mysterium, I haven't played it, but the art looks really nice, and I really like the concept of it. Like how you advance things. Like you have to use these pictures that can be very vague and also very detailed in just random things, and you have to communicate a point just via pictures.
It's like Clue. It's like solving a Clue mystery, but all your clues are Dixit style, it's
Clue
beautiful images.
Dixit.
Yeah.
Which is why I love it so much.
Yeah.
I have a copy. I'll let you borrow it.
Okay. I have a copy, actually.
Oh, wait, why do you play it?
I haven't found people to play it with.
Again, maybe for the holiday part of it.
Yeah, this is not like reading our own table.
I keep saying we should just do an event for board games.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about minis a bit more, because I feel like if we're talking about minis, we got to talk about probably, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but possibly one of the larger of technical board games would include tabletops, specifically Warhammer.
Okay.
Because those things are huge.
They are huge. And again, this is where do you draw the line between board games and tabletop games?
Miniatures games are kind of their own, in some cases, nightmarish monsters. I adore conceptually Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, but my goodness, the amount of time and energy, not even to play, to get ready to play, painting the minis
and designing the minis too, because this is one of the nice things and one of the bad things about Warhammer. They will give you the mini. Well, you can buy the minis. They don't give you. They're expensive.
Yeah,
they are expensive.
You need to buy the rule book to understand the minis that you have to buy.
So they'll have a mini, a pack of minis that's for 8 guys, whatever guys you're trying to get, Super Commando, whatever, and they will have 24 arms though. For your 8 guys. And the reason they do that is because some of the arms have a different kind of gun or a different kind of sword. And they don't say, oh, this is a shotgun or something. It looks like a shotgun, so then you have to go to the rules and be like, okay, how much damage does a shotgun do? And so you can completely customize your squad by giving them whatever weapons you want, whatever types of armor you want from the set. So they give you much more in the packs than what is actually required to build your guys, so that you can have a fully customized squad, which I think is really cool, but means that you have to completely understand everything from the beginning and be like, I need a guy with strong range or whatever. And then once you do that, you've made that guy, so you better be okay with it or buy something else.
It is one of those things that, again, as a concept, I love it. But yeah, the time and expense. There are other minis games that are a little bit easier to grok and, a little bit less, let's say, wallet intensive.
Yeah.
The old HeroScape.
Which is also one of my favorites, which is unfortunately, though, it's discontinued.
Yeah. They just failed a Kickstarter launch as well.
Yeah, which is a shame.
I know why. because it was literally like twice as expensive as the old kit, and the miniatures were no longer being painted in advance.
Right.
You're getting less for more, which is not how most people want things to go.
Yeah.
I don't mind games with unpainted minis. I have very terrible small motor skills, so if I have a game with unpainted minis, they're probably going to remain that way.
Although, if you are somebody who really, really wants painted minis and you can't paint them yourself, there are people and services where you can do that. Definitely, if you go to a gaming shop where they sell those types of things, usually the people who run that paint them and will paint them for you for a fee, of course. So there are options. I would, though, encourage, because this is what happened to me, because actually, HeroScape was my gateway game into gaming, and specifically into mini gaming, with the gaming with minis, not small games. But as Jeff said, the original set came with pre-painted ones, and that's what I was used to. And so when I moved over to other games and got them, one of the other branches over, I went to Arena of the Planeswalkers, which was basically just HeroScape set in the Magic the Gathering universe. They did not come with painted minis, except for the Planeswalkers. They only painted the Planeswalkers. So I didn't like that, and I didn't know that you could get people to paint them. So I thought the only option was for me to paint them myself. And that actually got me started enjoying painting things. So now I actually have numerous board games that I have bought and painted the minis, but haven't actually played them, because the painting of the minis is what I was... Yeah. That's actually how I got Rising Sun, because I saw it on Kickstarter and they had all of these minis of Japanese mythological creatures and gods and stuff. And I'm like, that looks really cool. I want those minis. I didn't care about the game. I didn't even read what the game was. I just said, those look cool. I want them. And so I got them, started painting them, and I'm like, I might as well play the game because I already have it.
Spent all this time painting these. I should at least see if the game is any good.
Yeah, and it is really good. I will say I am not able to speak very authoritatively on Warhammer, because that is actually one of the places where I draw the line. I'm not that intense of a gamer to play Warhammer. One of my other brothers, not the one who said he doesn't play games that he doesn't know the name of, a different brother does play Warhammer, so I know a little bit from him. But it is one of the most labor-intensive games that I'm aware of.
I know a few people, some in person, some just people I watch on, YouTube or Twitch, and there feels like there's a very love-hate relationship with the game, where it's just like, that they love these armies, they love the gameplay, but it's just kind of like the rules are constantly shifting and changing, and in a game like that where it's like, okay, here's the rules for this shotgun. You make, let's say, 8 guys with that shotgun. That's at least 12 hours of paint time. And then the company's like, you know what? Shotgun was too strong. We nerfed it. And now it's like, well, these are going to collect dust now.
And I would imagine... I know from myself, I get very, very attached to something the more time I spend on it. So the more I spend painting something, the more I'm like, this is a mini that I have to use. And I would think, especially when you're creating your own squad from scratch, basically, then you start to get in your own inner monologue of their backstory and their whole history and like why they came together, and each one has a name, and it's like, this is this squad. And you have your own whole narrative about their life, and then you go and play, and they get wiped out in 2 seconds because somebody spent $1,000 more than you. Then it's like, but the story,
I will say, to be fair to Warhammer, you can spend more money to get better units, but units have point values. So if you're spending that much more money, you're really only going to be playing against other people who have also spent that much money.
It's true.
I do like that as a system. I've played a few games like that. Again, Baby's first mini game to an extent. HeroClix had a similar system.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
HeroScape has that system too.
And that works.
Yeah.
It's a way to sort of balance things out. The miniatures games are, again, it's so much energy to put into these things. Like, I would say probably far too invested in Magic the Gathering to take on another very expensive hobby.
Yeah.
But even, like, with that, like, I have considered buying them to attempt painting, but I have never considered playing that game because it is such a time and monetary investment. On the upside, they did release a bunch of Warhammer 40k Magic the Gathering cards, so at least I can enjoy some of the weird art and flavor of the universe.
And I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there is a Warhammer 40k board game.
There are a couple.
The one I'm thinking of is The Betrayal of somebody. I can't remember the name. I played it twice. And it is a very fun game. It's a very elaborate game. This is one of the ones where I'm saying a gateway to this is on the other side, very far, again, very complicated, and a huge setup time. Takes really long to play, really long to set it up. But it is a very fun game. Oh, it's the Horus Heresy. That's what it's called.
That's it.
Yeah. It's a very fun game, but you have to want to play this game. And you have to, like Jeff was saying, set aside a weekend to be like, I will play this game.
And that's, goodness, so I go to PAX East and PAX Unplugged basically every year. And every year at both of these conventions, there is basically just this one room with these older dudes playing old war miniatures, like Axis and Allies kind of things, where it's like a full-blown, full-scale war. And that's what they'll do the whole convention. Like, they will be in that room from when the convention hall opens to when it closes, playing one game over the course of 3 to 4 days. That's intense. I could not commit that kind of time to something like that.
Well, I have a friend of mine who works at a gaming store. And every year, about July, he actually drives all the way, because he lives all the way in Erie. He drives all the way across the state and then all the way to Atlantic City in New Jersey to referee at a weekend tournament for 40K.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And he loves it. If you love it, you are... you're into it. And obviously, you're not, like, blind to all the drawbacks and things.
Yeah.
But I've seen the guy's workshop. He has boxes full of like, I guess they're technically miniatures, but the things are basically the size of toasters.
Yeah.
They look like them, too.
Some of the tanks can be a bit intense.
They can.
I'm talking about
The orc
constructs.
The power armors. Some of the orc vehicles are fantastic.
Yeah.
Big, junky.
I remember, I think it was called Showcase Comics in the, what was that? No, it was Grant Run Mall. Had one unit, like one essentially vehicle that was at least 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
And had like a 2-foot square base. And that was just an actual unit in the game. Like,
it is very cool. I have definitely gotten Warhammer sets to play other games with because they have some really cool designs sometimes.
Oh, they do.
So
the Necron, like everything about the Necron I love.
Yeah, these ones were like Reaper, Angel type things, and they were very cool looking. That's the one set that I got. I've gotten a couple, but...
That's what happened to me. My friend was like, oh, you like model kits? Here, try one from the game that I like.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And it was this battle tank, and the second I realized, you mentioned the customizing thing, the second I realized, I could put like plasma throwers and flamethrowers on this tank that has machine guns. Absolutely, I'm putting like everything on there. And I came to the conclusion, I'm probably never going to play. If I play, am I going to use this miniature? I don't know. I don't care. I'm just going to glue on extra stuff. So technically it would be illegal, but it does look cool. And it was so much fun to actually build. You can find fun even in board games, tabletop games.
Oh, yeah.
Where
painting minis is actually one of my favorite pastimes now. I do it to relax. I do it just to unwind. Full disclosure, it does take about 4 hours per mini. But I'm quite happy to give that time because it It's relaxing to me, and I like seeing the end result. I like it when I open up a box and see just rows of minis that are all painted, as opposed to when they're all just monochromatic. But bringing it back to where we were going with simpler games, if this has been intimidating for you, don't worry. Not all games require you to paint them, and if you don't like painted things. But one game that is a cooperative game, does have minis, and you can paint them if you want, is Shadows over Camelot, which I enjoy. Again, I really like the Arthurian Legends motif that it has. But like Jeff was saying, there is a motif, there is a theme for you for everything. There's the competitive games, there's the cooperative games if you want a little mix of that. There's the trader games.
Yeah, Betrayal at the House on the Hill series
that's
among the best for that.
Yeah, and so, but again, there's flavors of that too. So Shadows over Camelot can have a trader game, a trader mechanic. There's Fury of Dracula, which is a very fun game, where one player, it's not a trader game, but it's similar mechanics. One player is Dracula, the rest are hunters, and they're trying to find him. And there's a zombie game called Dead of Winter, which is really, really fun, where all the players are cooperating to build a colony to survive the zombie apocalypse. However, each player also has their own motivations to get through the apocalypse. So your motivations may be you don't actually trust the colony, and so you're going to steal the resources and run. Or you might have something that is more of a cooperative goal, but still everybody has their own goals. So there is the different themes. I know that Betrayal and House on the Hill, I never get the order of the words of that one correct.
It's Betrayal at the House on the Hill.
Okay.
Actually, I believe it's actually The Betrayal.
Is it the? It might.
But so yeah, there is a theme for everyone. I know that one, Dracula and the Dead of Winter, are all a horror theme, but there are plenty of games that are not in the horror theme. And there are also different tiers of horror.
Yeah, like there's literally a version of Betrayal that is Scooby-Doo. It's aimed at a younger audience, but also pretty funny if you know a lot about Scooby-Doo.
There was, I'm sure this is an obscure game now. I don't know if they ever made more copies of it, but I certainly have one. Going on the horror theme, and the only reason I really bring it up is because you mentioned Dracula, and I think this has a really neat gimmick, but it was called, I think, Vampire Hunter, and the objective of the game was, essentially it was like the plot of Dracula. Like, you had to find the head vampire and kill him in his crypt. You know where his crypt is, but you had to, like, go through the board, you had to roll dice or whatever, navigate, and eventually reach there, but you had to find, like, a weapon. You needed to find, like, a silver sword or a crucifix or something. The neat thing about it was you could encounter people or, like, you know, search things, and there was you're supposed to play this in the dark. The only light source was a tower that had a light that switched between red and blue. If it was red, you were playing in the daytime. So if you're going through this thing, you run into a village person. If the game turned to night and you would switch the light, they printed the cards with a red and blue thing.
That's super neat.
When the light goes to blue, the villager would turn into a werewolf.
So since you're playing Castlevania 2, the board game, I'm all about that.
Wow.
Kind of. And you had to reach his crypt in at least 20 turns, because if you didn't at least reach it in 20 turns, and I love this, there was a ship that would move every turn. And it was supposed to be like he was on that ship. Or it was coming to pick him up. I forget which. But anyway, if it reaches him or reaches the town or whatever, you lose. Like, everybody loses. And that was sort of a cooperative thing. Like, you had to survive together to get to the end and kill the vampire. But that day and night gimmick,
that is a very cool gimmick.
So cool.
Yeah.
And that is something you'll find sometimes. Is you'll just find this game with this really unique mechanic that you'll love.
So many good board games that have, like, scared. Like, I'm thinking of, like, have you ever heard of Rattle Me Bones?
Yeah. So an aimed at kids game, but again, horror's fun. Like, I get why there are so many horror games. You know, and it's also a very easy theme to, like, if you want people to work together to reach a goal, fighting Dracula is a goal that I feel like, no, I'm going to work with whoever to get rid of Dracula.
Dracula brings people together.
Ironically, I think the scariest board game I ever played was a goofy little game called Tomb of Doom.
Okay.
Where the objective was there was a bunch of like mini games, and if you won the mini game, whichever one you were supposed to play, there were a bunch of different ones. If you won it, you got to pick a key. The key was shaped like a little skull, and you had to insert it into a treasure chest. If the chest opened, you got a piece of gold. The objective was to get first person to get 2 pieces of gold. Here's the thing. Only one of the keys worked. The other keys, when inserted, would trigger the giant skull that you would attach to the base of the board game. Its teeth would chatter, its eyeballs because it had eyeballs, would shake like crazy, and it laughed at you in a high-pitched laugh. It was terrifying.
Well.
But that game was awesome. Again, goofy horror gimmicks are fantastic for board games. It's not all there is, but who boy is it good.
There's a role-playing game that I'm forgetting the name of. I'm sure you've heard of it, though, so if I start talking about it, you'll recognize it. Where the mechanic, as opposed to rolling dice, is playing Jenga.
Oh, goodness. I can't remember.
Dread, I think?
Yes, it is just Dread.
Which is a great mechanic because the name really, really describes how you are playing it. And it's typically in the horror genre how people play it. And so it's like, okay, well, you're hunting a vampire. You have to jump over a chasm pole from the tower. And at first you're just like, okay. But as the game builds, you've been pulling more and more from the tower. The Jenga tower is getting pretty wobbly. And so by the time you get to the final boss, if you even make it that far, it's a mess. And they're like, okay, now drive the stake into Dracula. And you won't have to pull this block from the tower. And it's already leaning. And you're just like, oh no. And if it falls, I think the rules say that your character dies.
Yeah.
So Dread is an appropriate name for that.
And it's again, what a clever way to reuse that existing game.
Yeah. And it's really easy, too, because everybody knows.
Yes, everybody knows how to play Jenga.
Yeah.
Most people probably, even if you don't know it, you probably have a copy of Jenga hiding somewhere in your house from decades ago.
Well, we got rid of ours, but not with all the pieces.
I mean, that's usually what happens to Jenga is, one piece gets lost and you're just like, well, this is useless now.
I found a use for it. For my microphone boom on my desk at home, one of the latches broke. So instead I used the piece of wood. I used the Jenga piece to screw the wood into it. It's great. It's perfect.
There you go.
Sold at a yard sale. Lost piece. Now it's found a new purpose.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alex, for coming on and talking board games with us.
Sure.
Before we fully wrap up, since we're talking about a library, board games, that's what we're celebrating here, what's on the itinerary for the rest of this month?
Well, the big one is we do have the Catan tournament on the 26th.
26th.
Yeah, I mean, every third Saturday we do Family Game Day, which is just, we bring out our, again, collection of board games, let people test them out, either bring some friends, bring family, or, you might meet some new people here to play with. And if you find one you like, you can check it out. We've also got, I think, one last Learn to Play series coming up, which is featuring Magic the Gathering. That's going to be on Wednesday the 30th. So if you want to try and tackle the 30 years of rules of Magic the Gathering, I promise it's not nearly as bad as it sounds, again, unless we try and talk about banding.
There are different versions of the game, too, so there are more simplified versions.
We will be playing with very low-power decks, let's put it that way. I'm not going to throw every keyword in the game at you at once. We're going to learn the very basics, and if there's interest in learning more, there's a lot of resources that can help with that.
All right. Well, then, let's. Do we have a topic for next month's podcast yet?
Not at this point.
Well, then that sounds like a good time to plug that we are looking for more people to come in and talk about what you're passionate about.
You can find us at lansdowne.library.org/podcasts. There is a green button that says register here. And you can tell us what you're passionate about and possibly end up on an episode in the future. But for now, I hope you enjoy the rest of this November, and
Play more games.
Play some games.
Thanksgiving's coming. It's supposed to be a family thing. Go
check
play
out
some
a game.
games.
If you want a quick recommendation for something that's super easy to learn, again, Dixit is fantastic, and it's a great game for all ages.
Or try Catan. Get warmed up for the tournament.
Or even ask anybody at the front desk of the library, and we will...
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you some recommendations.